All right, so get ready because we are going way back in time for this deep dive. Like, way back. 522 BC, ancient Babylon.
Hmm.
A rebellion you probably haven't heard about. Nebuchadnezzar III.
And you know what's really interesting about this whole period? It's just a few decades, right? After Babylon falls to the Persians.
Right.
And it'd be easy to think, oh, just a new empire, same old, same old.
But it wasn't.
Okay, so set the scene for us. We're talking about Babylon, legendary city. It's now under the rule of the Persians. What's the feeling there?
It's almost like, imagine, right, Babylon.
Yeah.
Top of the world, right? Center of their own empire.
Yeah.
And now they're part of this much bigger thing, the Persian Empire. Diverse. And on the one hand, the Persians, especially Cyrus the Great, they knew Babylon was important, culturally important, strategically important, but their way of ruling.
Yeah.
Not exactly a perfect fit for how the Babylonians saw the world.
Because it wasn't just about who was in charge. It was about how they ruled. Right. That's it. Exactly. And the sources you shared, they really highlight this. It's like this sacred contract.
Interesting.
Between a Babylonian king and his people. It wasn't just, oh, I'm the king, I'm in my palace, you do what I say. No, no, no.
It was more hands-on.
Babylonian kings, they were expected to be there, in the thick of it, participating in religious rituals, upholding traditions, being seen as protectors of their people.
So even if the Persians weren't going out of their way to dismantle Babylonian culture, the fact that they weren't present, that they weren't really engaging in these traditions, it's like they were poking the bear a little bit.
That's a great way to put it. This resentment builds. Like you're not a real Babylonian king, you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And that's the perfect opening for someone like Nebuchadnezzar III to enter the scene.
And enter the scene he did. So who was this guy? Because I gotta say, Nebuchadnezzar III, it doesn't quite have the same ring to it as, his famous predecessor, Nebuchadnezzar II.
Chuckles. And that is completely intentional. This guy, our Nebuchadnezzar III, he was originally known as Nadintubel.
Okay.
But he was a smart cookie. This wasn't some nobody who just, popped up out of nowhere. He came from the Babylonian aristocracy, the Suzaku family.
Yeah.
And they were a big deal. Religious influence, political influence, the whole 9 yards.
So he had some power behind him, even before the whole rebel king thing.
Oh, absolutely. And he understood branding, legacy. Taking the name Nebuchadnezzar, that's directly linking himself to like the glory days of Babylon.
Right.
Nebuchadnezzar II, the Hanging Gardens, conquering Jerusalem. That's the guy you want to remind people of. Brilliant move to get people on his side, to tap into that nostalgia for what seemed like a better time.
And to make it even more legitimate, he claims to be a son of Nabonidus, the last independent king of Babylon before those Persians marched in. Talk about a power move.
Pure political genius. He's using family ties, historical parallels. He's not just a rebel, he's the rightful heir, the one who's going to bring back the good old days. And all of this is happening while the Persian Empire itself is a little, shall we say, unstable.
Okay, set the stage. Persia, 522 BC. What's going on?
Right, so Darius I, the big cheese, right?
Yeah.
The one we usually think of when we think powerful, unified Persia. He wasn't fully in charge yet.
Okay.
The throne at this time, it belonged to Bardia. And Bardia is, well, he's a bit of a mystery wrapped in an enigma, Some say he was a fake. Some say he was just really unpopular, weak ruler. Whatever the truth is, his time on the throne, total chaos, revolts popping up all over the Persian Empire.
And our guy, Nebuchadnezzar III, sitting in Babylon, he sees this chaos and thinks, opportunity.
Bingo. He doesn't hesitate, takes control of Babylon, and not just like a symbolic thing, He secures key cities, Borsippa, Sippar,
Uruk.
Important cities.
Religious centers, economic centers, the works. There's even some thought that for a hot minute, he might have brought back Babylonian independence. Completely.
So for a brief shining moment, he actually pulls it off.
Right.
It seems that way. But as with all things ancient history, the records are, let's just say, open to interpretation. A lot of what we know comes from the Behistun inscription.
Right. Which is basically Darius I's version of the story. Exactly.
It's basically Darius's victory lap carved in stone.
Yeah.
But it does give us, even with the bias, this fascinating look at Nebuchadnezzar III.
Oh.
Darius, he describes him as an older man, short beard. Makes you wonder, what kind of leader was he? Was he a seasoned general? Or just some guy thrust into a situation he wasn't really ready for?
It's really interesting. So we have this mysterious rebel leader reclaiming his homeland while this huge empire is in chaos. What could go wrong?
Well, Darius I, He wasn't about to let a little thing like a Babylonian rebellion go unchecked.
Right.
This guy Darius, he was laser focused on really taking control of this giant empire.
Right.
And a rebellion, especially in a place like Babylon.
Yeah, symbolically important.
Huge blow. It just couldn't be tolerated.
So what did he do? Just, like, gather his armies in beelines straight for Babylon?
Yeah, pretty much. But he was strategic about it. I mean, think about it. Nebuchadnezzar, he knows Darius is coming, right?
Yeah.
So he sets up a defensive line along the Tigris River. Smart move.
Makes sense. Natural barrier.
Right. Slow the Persians down.
So how'd Darius get through that?
Here's where the Persians, they really show their, how do I put this? Military cleverness, let's say.
Chuckles. I like it.
So they get these animal skins, right? Inflate them like giant balloons.
Okay.
And they use those as rafts across the whole darn river.
Oh, no way.
Oh, yeah. Flank Nebuchadnezzar's forces completely.
Talk about outmaneuvered. I mean, can you imagine being Nebuchadnezzar at that moment? Seeing that?
I can't even imagine. It's such a good example, though, right? The Persians, they were adaptable. They thought outside the box.
Yeah, that's not just brute force. That's strategy.
Exactly. This is what made them such a dominant force for so long, you know? Logistics, adapting on the fly. That's how you build an empire.
It's true. All right, so after the whole river crossing incident, what happens? Does Nebuchadnezzar just surrender?
He put up a fight. The two sides, they end up clashing at the Battle of Zizana, December of 522 BC.
Okay.
And Nebuchadnezzar's forces, they fought hard, but
I'm guessing those surprise rafts didn't help.
they probably didn't. The sources, they don't get into the nitty-gritty details of the battle, but we do know that Nebuchadnezzar, he realizes he's outmatched.
Yeah.
So he heads back to Babylon.
Tries to regroup.
Exactly. But it's too late.
Oh, man. What happens to Babylon? What happens to Nebuchadnezzar?
Darius takes the city. The rebellion is over. Nebuchadnezzar, he was captured. And, well, you know how these things usually went back then.
Not great.
Not great at all.
He was executed.
Man, that's rough. It always feels a little, disheartening when a story like this ends that way, even if they were probably going to lose anyway.
True. But back then, especially with empires constantly fighting for power, rebellion was a very, very dangerous game.
For sure. High risk, high reward, I guess. But here's the thing about Nebuchadnezzar. Even though his rebellion failed, the story didn't end there, did it? Exactly. And this is what I find so fascinating. His story it echoes.
It really does.
Yeah.
Like centuries later, people are still talking about this guy.
Oh, totally. Remember we were talking about Bel led another Babylonian uprising almost 200 years after Nebuchadnezzar III.
Yeah.
And guess what name he takes for himself?
Let me guess. Nebuchadnezzar.
Nebuchadnezzar IV.
Wow. I mean, that's incredible. So even after 2 centuries, Nebuchadnezzar III, he's still a symbol.
A legend. He represented that Babylonian resistance spirit. And it wasn't just him personally, right? It was what he stood for. Fighting for their homeland, fighting to hold on to their culture, their traditions, even with this huge empire breathing down their necks. Clearly, something about Nebuchadnezzar III, it resonated with people.
That's so powerful. It makes you think, what was it about him that made such an impact? Was it because he was part of this royal line? Was it his guts? Or just, I don't know, the sheer audacity to go up against this, unstoppable empire?
The million-dollar question. What is it about certain people, certain moments in history that capture our imaginations like that?
It's amazing, though, when you think about it. This guy, he only ruled for a few months, right? But his legacy, it lasted for centuries.
It really makes you think about what it means to leave a mark on the world,
Absolutely. It's like his story, it just tapped into something, I don't know, something universal. This idea that we all want to be free, that we all want to hold on to who we are, where we come from.
Exactly. Nebuchadnezzar's story, on the surface, is this little rebellion in ancient Babylon. But when you dig deeper, you see these timeless themes. The fight for freedom, for self-determination.
And that's what makes studying history so fascinating, isn't it? It's not just memorizing dates and names. It's about understanding people, motivations, the ripple effects of their choices.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
Nebuchadnezzar III might not be a household name, but by really diving into his story, we learn so much, not just about ancient Babylon, but about ourselves.
Well said. And I think that's a great place to wrap up this deep dive. To everyone listening, the next time you stumble across a name you don't recognize, a little footnote in history, don't be afraid to dig a little deeper. You never know what amazing stories are waiting to be discovered.
Here.
Thanks for joining us.